Good morning.
Morning.
And welcome to Waiting for the Light. Welcome also to All Saints Episcopal Church. We're so glad that you are here. My name is Genevieve Razim, and it's a joy to serve as the rector of All Saints. Now, 3rd or maybe it was 2nd century Bishop of Lyon, Irenaeus, said, "The glory of God is the human being fully alive." And we here at All Saints believe that includes expressing yourself in the arts, whether it be music or dance, art, poetry. It's part of what it means to be human. It's part of our createdness. So what a beautiful thing that we can do this today, waiting for the light. And with deepest gratitude to Jolynn Free, who of course, this is her vision and has organized all this. And of course, thank you to all the musicians and folks who will be offering the poetry. We are so grateful. So welcome, glad that you are here. And hey, if all this sounds good to you, we gather every Sunday at 10 a.m. Love to have you here. If you are looking for a church home, we would love to be that for you. So welcome, my friends.
The dream of reason. I stand alone under the stars, audience to an immense quiet, or not quite alone. Something regards me through an invisible opening. The enigma of the infinitesimal. You've seen them at dusk, walking along the shore, seen them standing in doorways, leaning from windows, or straddling the slow-moving edge of a shadow. Lovers of the in-between, they are neither here nor there, neither in nor out. Poor souls, they are driven to experience the impossible. Even at night, they lie in bed with one eye closed and the other open, hoping to catch the last second of consciousness and the first of sleep, to inhabit that no man's land, that beautiful place, to behold as only a God might, the luminous conjunction of nothing and all. Atavism. Sometimes in the open you look up where the birds go by, or just nothing, and wait. A dim feeling comes, you were once like this. There was air and quiet. It was by a lake, or maybe a river. You were alert as an otter, and were suddenly born like the evening star into wide, still worlds like this one you have found again for a moment in the open. Something is being told in the woods. Aisles of shadow lead away, a branch waves, a pencil of sunlight slowly travels its path. A withheld presence almost speaks, but then retreats, rustles a patch of brush. You can feel the centuries ripple, generations of wandering, discovering, being lost and found, eating, dying, being born. A walk through the forest strokes your fur, the fur you no longer have, and your gaze down a forest aisle is a strange, long plunge, dark eyes looking for home. For delicious minutes, you can feel your whiskers wider than your mind, a way out over everything.
Dead stars. Out here, there's the bowing even the trees are doing, winter's icy hand on the back of us all. Black bark, slick yellow leaves, a kind of stillness that feels so mute it's almost in another year. I am a hearth of spiders these days, a nest of trying. We point out the stars that make Orion as we take out the trash, the rolling containers, a song of suburban thunder. It's almost romantic as we adjust the waxy blue recycling bin until you say, man, we should really learn some new constellations. And it's true. We keep forgetting about Antilia, Centaurus, Draco, Lacerta, Hydra, Lyra, Lynx. But mostly we're forgetting we're dead stars too. My mouth is full of dust, and I wish to reclaim the rising, to lean into the spotlight of a streetlight with you, towards what's larger within us, toward how we were born. Look, we are not unspectacular things. We've come this far, survived this much. What would happen if we decided to survive more, to love harder? What if we stood up with our synapses and flesh and said no, no to the rising tides? Stood for the many mute mouths of the sea, of the land. What would happen if we used our bodies to bargain for the safety of others? For Earth, if we declared a clean night, if we stopped being terrified, if we launched our demands into the sky, made ourselves so big people could point to us with the arrows they make in their minds, rolling their trash bins out after all this is over. Leave-taking. Nearing the start of that mysterious last season, which brings us to the close of the other four, I'm somewhat afraid and don't know how to prepare, so I will praise you. I will praise you for the glaze on buttercups and for the pearly scent of wild fresh water and the great crossbow shape of swans flying over with that strong silken threshing sound of wings which you gave them when you made them without voices. And I will praise you for the crickets on starry autumn nights when the earth is cooling. The rusty diminutive music repeated over and over is the very marrow of peace. And I praise you for crows calling from treetops, the speech of my first village, and for the sparrow's flash of song flinging me in an instant, the joy of a child who woke each morning in the freedom of her mother's unclouded love and lived in it like a country. And I praise you that from vacant lots, from only broken glass and candy wrappers, you raise up the blue chicory flowers. I thank you for that secret praise which burns in every creature, and I ask you to bring us life out of every sort of death, and teach us mercy. To each her own. Martha knows the dinner will not cook itself. Mary feels the moment swiftly passing. Martha knows that each thing has its place. Mary notices how each thing changes with the light. Martha knows a word from him would change things. Mary turns the words like honeyed almonds in her mouth. Martha knows the kitchen turned temple, the pot of stew a thurible, filling every empty space. Mary listens with a thirst that frightens her for something that makes no sound.
Ode to the Republic. It's going to be so great when America is just a second fiddle, and we stand on the sidelines and watch the big boys slug it out. Old men reading the Times on benches in Central Park will smile and say, "Let Brazil take care of it." Farmers in South Carolina will have bumper stickers that read, "One nation with vegetables for all," and USA numero uno for grade A tomatoes. America, you big scary baby. Didn't you know when you pounded your chest like that in public, it just embarrassed us? When you lied to yourself on television, we looked down at our feet. When your left hand turned into a claw when you hammered the little country down and chanted the Pledge of Allegiance, I put on my new sunglasses and stared at the church across the street. I thought I had to go down with you, hating myself in red and white and blue, learning to say, "I'm sorry," in more and more foreign languages. But now at last, the end of our dynasty has arrived, and I feel humble and calm and curiously free. It's so good to be unimportant. It's so nice to sit on the shore of the Potomac and watch time take back half of everything. It's a relief to take the dog for a walk without body armor and stun guns, without frightening the neighbors. My country, 'tis of thee I sing. There are worse things than being second burrito, minor player, ex-big shot, former VIP, drinking decaf in the nursing home for downsized superpowers. Like a Navajo wearing a cowboy hat, may you learn to handle history ironically. May you look into the mirror and see your doubleness, old blue eyes in a brown face. May your women finally lay down the law, no more war on school night. May your shame at failing be cushioned by the oldest kind of the chemotherapy, stage after stage of acceptance. May someone learn to love you again. May you sit on the porch with the other countries in the late afternoon and talk about chickens and rain. Rabbit is up to his tricks. In a world long before this one, there was enough for everyone until somebody got out of line. We heard it was Rabbit, fooling around with clay and wind. Everybody was tired of his tricks and no one would play with him. He was lonely in this world. So Rabbit thought to make a person. And when he blew into the mouth of the crude figure to see what would happen, the clay man stood up. Rabbit showed the clay man how to steal a chicken. The clay man obeyed. Rabbit showed him how to steal corn. The clay man obeyed. Then he showed him how to steal someone else's wife. The clay man obeyed. Rabbit felt important and powerful. Clayman felt important and powerful. And once that Clayman started, he could not stop. Once he took that chicken, he wanted all the chickens. And once he took that corn, he wanted all the corn. And once he took that wife, he wanted all the wives. He was insatiable. Then he had a taste of gold, and he wanted all the gold. Then it was land and anything else he saw. His wanting only made him want more. Soon it was countries, then it was trade. The wanting infected the earth. We lost track of the purpose and reason for life. We began to forget our songs. We forgot our stories. We could no longer see or hear our ancestors or talk with each other across the kitchen table. Forests were being mowed down all over the world, and Rabbit had no place to play. The rabbit's trick had backfired. Rabbit tried to call the Clayman back, but when the Clayman wouldn't listen, Rabbit realized he'd made a Clayman with no ears.
A new moon. A new moon teaches gradualness and deliberation and how one gives birth to oneself slowly. Patience with small details makes perfect a large work like the universe. What 9 months of attention does for an embryo, 40 early mornings will do for your gradually growing wholeness. Yahweh to Urset. I pray that you are kept safe throughout this day, that you live as holy as you can, that you see things that you have not seen before, and that more of them are beautiful than not, more of them delightful than not. I pray that you hold easily in your hands the balance of the earth and sky, that you laugh and cry, know freedom and restraint, some joy, some sorrow, pleasure and pain, much of life and a little of death. I pray that you are grateful for the path of your being, and I pray that you celebrate your life in the proper way with grace and humility, wonder and contentment in the strong, deep current of your Spirit's voice. I pray that you are happily in love in the dawn, and that you are more deeply in love in the dusk. Amen. You must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an unknown hour. Big clock. When the big clock at the train station stopped, the leaves kept falling, the trains kept running, my mother's hair kept growing longer and darker, and my father's body kept filling up with time. I can't see the year on the station's calendar. We slept under the stopped hands of the clock until morning, when a man entered carrying a ladder. He climbed up the clock's face and opened it with a key. No one but he knew what he saw. Below him, the mortal faces went on passing toward all compass points. People went on crossing borders, buying tickets in one time zone and setting foot in another, crossing thresholds, sleep to waking and back, waiting room to moving train and back, war zone to safe zone and back, crossing between gain and loss, learning new words for the world and the things in it, forgetting old words for the heart and the things in it, and collecting words in a different language for those three primary colors: staying, leaving, and returning. And only the man at the top of the ladder understood what he saw behind the face, which was neither smiling nor frowning. And my father's body went on filling up with death until it reached the highest etched mark of his eyes and spilled into mine. And my mother's hair goes on, never reaching the earth. A man with a rake. Under his faded, soft fisherman's hat and lifting his face to the early spring sun, he stopped for a moment to rest. Up to his ankles in leaves, he's drawn into the center of a circle of green. He's propped some of his weight on the rake, the end of its handle locked in a knot of his fingers, and this pressed to his cheek, his eyes closed. Before this, he'd been watching the rake tick around clockwise, minute to minute, a fine afternoon passing forever away. But he's figured out how to slow it all down. Both hands clasped on the end of the second hand, holding it back.
Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention, notice. He says, keep looking, stay curious. He says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. He says, keep changing and just get more who you really are. He says, get stuck, accept it, repeat yourself as long as it is interesting. He says, keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says, every one of us is frightened. He says, every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says, everything is alive. Shells, buildings, people, fish, mountains, trees. Wood is alive. Water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says, it doesn't matter if you draw or write books or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Love, feel, let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you.
Horses at midnight without a moon. Our heart wanders lost in the dark woods. Our dream wrestles in the castle of doubt. But there's music in us. Hope is pushed down, but the angel flies up again, taking us with her. The summer mornings begin inch by inch while we sleep, and walk with us later as long-legged beauty through the dirty streets. It is no surprise that danger and suffering surround us. What astonishes is the singing. We know the horses are there in the dark meadow because we can smell them, can hear them breathing. Our spirit persists like a man struggling through the frozen valley who suddenly smells flowers and realizes the snow is melting out of sight on top of the mountain, knows that spring has begun. At any moment, there could be a swerve in a different direction. There was a moment when shooting egrets for feathers became wrong. There was a moment when the Wilderness Act changed the lives of billions of blades of grass. I remember the moment when the river that used to catch fire turned from flammable to swimmable. A swerve smells astringent, like the wind off the sea. It tastes red, the way red-hot cinnamon mints burn in your mouth. It's heavy, the way a sack of letters is heavy, arriving in sacks at the Senate. It sounds like the click of needles as hundreds of women's knit pink hats. It looks like a coyote crossing the freeway to go home. An altogether different language. There was a church in Umbria, little portion, already old, 800 years ago. It was abandoned in disrepair, but it was called St. Mary of the Angels, for it was known as the haunt of angels. Often at midnight, country people could hear them singing there. What was it like to listen to the angels, to hear those mountain fresh, those simple voices poured out on the bare stones of Little Portion in hymns of joy? No one has told us. Perhaps it needs another language that we still have to learn, an altogether different language.
Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Hill country. He comes down from the hills, from the craggy rock, the shrubs, the scrawny live oaks and dried up junipers, down from the cloud bellies and the bellies of hawks, from the caracara stalking carcasses, from the clear, sun-smacked soundlessness that shrouds him. From the weathered bed of planks outside the cabin, where he goes to be alone with his questions, God comes down along the road with his windows unrolled so the twigs and hanging vines can slap and scrape against him in his Jeep. down past the buck caught in the hog trap that kicks and heaves, bloodied, blinded by the whiff of its own death, which God, thank God, staves off. He downshifts, crosses the shallow trickle of river that only just last May scoured the side of the canyon to rock. Gets out, walks along the limestone bank, castor beans, cactus, scat of last night's coyotes. Down below the hilltops, he squints out at shadow, tree backing tree, dark depth the eyes glide across, not bothering to decipher what it hides. A pair of dragonflies mate in flight. Tiny flowers throw frantic color at his feet. If he tries, if he holds his mind in place and wills it, he can almost believe in something larger than himself, rearranging the air. He squints at the Jeep glaring in the bright sun, stares a while at the patterns the tall branches cast onto the undersides of leaves. Then God climbs back into the cab, returning to everywhere.
New world. There are no slaughterhouses. The glittering river has seeped back into the healed earth. The fields are wrung dry and laid out like a flag. There are no feedlots for fattening. Steel chutes stand blank and open, rendering only a grain of sunlight, an empty wind. In this great stillness, which is neither happy nor unhappy, Fly does his tedious business. The flank of an eating animal shudders. At night, the stars fall from Bethlehems and land sputtering in the fields like bottle rockets. To the animals standing half asleep, these are only angels to be taken lightly. Their hides grow long and prehistoric, fed on the rich darkness. They've become their own houses, ovens banked and keeping. In the morning, the sun may rise, who knows? There is nothing to be longed for. The belt. After she heaved all day against the boards of her enclosure, after she panted so long that foam bloomed on her lips, after the sun sharpened like fumes over the field and shadows began to climb out of the earth, he unbuckled his belt and fed the leather between her teeth, the big tongue soft as a sea creature, saying, "Here, bite down, girl. I come to give you something, and the gift is your own strength, returned to you as surrender." And she mouthed hard, and the calf came out like jelly, inert and cooling on the trampled straw. It was dusk. High above us, swallows found their holes in the tower of hay. A few minutes later, she stood, drank a little water from the trough. His belt, where she'd chewed it, was like chewed bread. And how did you imagine mercy would look?
Totally. I'm raking leaves and singing in my off-key voice a mangled version of Madonna's Like a Virgin, a song I thought I hated. That's how it goes when your head and heart are in different time zones. You often don't find out until tomorrow what you felt today. I know I do not understand the principles of leaf removal. I pile them up in glowing heaps of cadmium and orange, but I identify so much more with the entropic gusts of wind that knock them all apart again. Is it natural to be scattered? When I look to the sky, I'm often dreaming of a television program that I saw some months ago. And when I walk into a dinner party, I'm thinking of the book I mean to read when I get home. You might say my here is disconnected to my now, so never am I entirely anywhere or anyone. But I won't speak cruelly of myself. This dividedness is just what makes our species great. Possible for Darwin to figure out his theory of selection while playing five-card stud, or Surgeon Keats to find a perfect rhyme wrist deep in the disorder of an open abdomen. For example, it is autumn here. The defoliated trees look frightened at the edge of town, as if the train they missed had taken all their clothes. The whole world in unison is turning toward a zone of nakedness and cold. But me, I have this strange conviction that I am going to be born. Prophets. Once in Advent season, when I was walking down a narrow street, I met a flock of children who all came running up to me saying they were prophets. And for a penny, they would prophesy. I gave them each a penny. They started out by rummaging in trash cans until they found a ragged piece of silk. In blue, they said blue is a holy color. Blue is the color the mountains are when they are far away. They laid the rag on a small fire of newspaper and shavings and burned it in the street. They scraped up all the ashes and with them decorated each other's faces. Then they ran back to me and stood in a circle round me. We stood that way in solemn silence until one of the children spoke. It was the prophecy. He said that long before the pear tree blossoms or sparrows in the hedges begin to sing, a child will be our king.
How silently the wondrous gift is given, so God imparts to human hearts the blessings of his heaven. Turkeys. One November, a week before Thanksgiving, the Ohio River froze, and my great-uncles put on their coats and drove the turkeys across the ice to Rose Clare, where they sold them for enough to buy my grandmother a Christmas doll with blue china eyes. I like to think of the sound of 200 turkey feet running across the Illinois on their way to the platter, the scrape of their nails and my great-uncles in their homespun leggings calling out gee and haw and git as if they were mules. I like to think of the Ohio at that moment, the clear, cold sky, the green river sleeping under the ice, before the land got stripped and the farm got sold and the water turned the color of whiskey, and all the uncles lay down and never got up again. I like to think of the world before some genius invented turkeys with pop-up plastic thermometers in their breasts. Idiot birds with no wildness left in them, turkeys that couldn't run the river to save their souls.
December 26. A BB gun, a model plane, a basketball, the electric train, a bicycle, a cowboy hat, a comic book, a baseball bat, a deck of cards, a science kit, a racing car, a catcher's mitt. That's my list of everything that Santa Claus forgot to bring. The angels have no wings. The angels have no wings. They come to you wearing their own clothes. They have learned to love you and will keep coming unless you insist on wings. Christmas Eve, nearing midnight in New York. The Christmas trees are almost all sold, and the ones that are left to go cheap. The children almost all over town have almost gone to sleep. The skyscraper lights on Christmas Eve have almost all gone out. There's very low traffic, almost no one's about. Our town's almost as quiet as Bethlehem must have been before a sudden angel chorus saying peace on earth, goodwill to men. Our old Statue of Liberty looks down almost with a smile as the island of Manhattan awaits the morning of the child.
Country stars. The nearsighted child has taken off her glasses and come downstairs to be kissed goodnight. She blows on a black window pane until it's white. Over the apple trees, a great bear passes, but she puts her own construction on the night. 2 cities, a chemical plant, and clotted cars breathe our distrust of darkness on the air, clouding the pane between us and the stars. But have no fear, or only proper fear. The bright watchers are still here. December. A little girl is singing for the faithful to come ye, joyful and triumphant, a song she loves. And also the partridge in a pear tree, and the golden rings and the turtle doves. In the dark streets, red lights and green and blue, where the faithful live, some joyful, some troubled, enduring the cold and also the flu, taking the garbage out and keeping the sidewalk shoveled. Not much triumph going on here, and yet there is much we do not understand. And my hopes and fears are met in this small singer holding onto my hand. Onward we go faithfully into the dark, and are there angels hovering overhead? Hark!
Snow. Snow, blessed snow, comes out of the sky like bleached flies. The ground is no longer naked. The ground has on its clothes. The trees poke out of sheets, and each branch wears the sock of God. There is hope. There is hope everywhere. I bite it. Someone once said, "Don't bite till you know if it's bread or stone." What I bite is all bread, rising yeasty as a cloud. There is hope. There is hope everywhere. Today, God gives milk, and I have a pail. Christmas light. When everyone had gone, I sat in the library with the small, silent tree. She and I alone, how softly she shone. And for the first time then, for the first time this year, I felt reborn again. I knew love's presence near. Love distant, love detached, and strangely without weight was with me in the night when everyone had gone and the garland of pure light stayed on, stayed on.